Hello and welcome. So, I just thought I'd share with you a recent kind of book that I've read. Now, I'm not a big reader, I'm more of a referencer. But this book in particular piqued my interest when I was a teenager back in 1994. It was, if you can see it, The Tale of Lowe's Gully, right? Descent into Chaos. Basically, Lowe's Gully is a deep 1800-metre gully that's been carved by classification on the north side of Mount Kinabalu, which is one of Borneo's and certainly that region's highest mountain. Now, the gully in particular is riddled with legend and myths of dragons and people stealing kind of the light and fire from the dragon. Again, you can research that yourself, but the reason why this story piqued my interest was it was involving the British Army and the exploration of that particular area. Now, it's called Lowe's Gully and goes way back to when the actual place was discovered, but the locals call it, Gully of the Dead or Place of the Dead. So straight away, before you've even gone there, you've got this vision of a gloomy place which kind of the dead go to. Now, it was back in 1994. A British Army expedition went out there to achieve the aim of being the first people ever to conquer the length of Lowe's Gully. It consists of 10 members, 2 officers, 5 junior NCOs, which are like corporals and sergeants, and 3 of the Hong Kong Chinese contingent. They went there with the aim, to achieve a world's first. Many had tried before and failed, and they believed, or certainly the officers believed at the time, because they were the ones that were driving this, that they would be the first to achieve this. Now, from reading that book, you can clearly see that from day one, the expedition was doomed, to be honest with you. Telltale signs were being missed and not picked up on. Advice was given, warnings were given, and by reading the book, I won't give too much away about the book, but there was things that, like an accumulation and a sequence of events, that kind of domino effect, which all led to ultimately them coming into a bad place where 5 of them were stuck for at least 3 weeks in a particular location in the jungle, in the gully, starving to death, and the other 5 got out just about with their lives. Now, this was back in, like I said, 1994. It made major news around the world at the time, and this is one of several books. The book itself was written by an independent who was also a military officer with jungle warfare experience. I believe he worked with the Gurkhas at the time. This particular officer who wrote this, Richard Connington, who wrote the book, right? If I go to the back, he was a former British officer who served with the Brigade of Gurkhas in the Far East for 7 years, so he's got quite a good background in understanding that kind of region. One of his appointments was as adjutant of the combined Gurkha and Hong Kong Chinese regiment. He now spends his time divided equally between conducting specialist studies for clients and writing books which interest him. So this chap who wrote this book has got a good background understanding the officer class, the Hong Kong kind of Far Eastern cultural aspects, as well as the region. And being a military officer, he would have gone on, I'm assuming now, which is not a good thing always, is it, to assume, an experience in offensive training. Now, from reading the book, and I've got a bit of a thing at the minute about reading books about where things go wrong. There are several out there, and I'm going to slowly work my way through them, because like I said, I'm not really a reader, I'm more of a referencer. Those key learning points that I took away from this, which is about the lack of training and preparation for the task at hand. Now, you had different people from different units with different abilities, different fitness levels, different levels of experience, different skill sets, which were kind of just thrown together, and it was almost like it was quickly just put through and pushed through to get out there on the agenda of the particular 2 officers running the expedition. Like I said, fitness, I've written down here, fitness, jungle training, jungle warfare training, so understanding, none of them apparently had been out in a jungle environment before. So it'd be like me going out to the Arctic and do an expedition, I would certainly want some form of Arctic training before I conduct operations or adventures in that area, because I need to know what to do if it all goes wrong. Historical information. Again, this place hadn't been attempted many times. More recently by two blokes called New and Page, I believe. New and Page. I can't remember the guy's name. But anyway, this guy New was a kind of world famous kind of explorer, mountaineer type chap, and he gave warning to the officers at the time that they probably weren't prepared for this particular adventure, but they just discounted it. Again, the whole operation was, expedition was very much climbing, abseiling. Now, they had one experienced person there, really. The other one was kind of like a mountain leader, but the rest, the Chinese were novices. The two officers had been there before and had got prior experience of the area, but never actually made it into the gully. So again, straight away, the lack of training and preparation and fitness, all these factors kind of on the first day from the story, when they made the walk from the bottom, from base camp up to the summit of the mountain, there was people flagging. The Chinese were, guys, they weren't trained. They're not that kind of, not like British soldiers who get beasted. And at the time, the Chinese guys weren't as fit and weren't used to carrying heavy packs, and they were thrust into a situation where they got to carry 35-40 kilogram packs up a steep mountain in a kind of humid tropical environment, which, let's face it, if you're put in that situation right now, how would you fare? Anyway, goes down to that old proper planning, 7 P's: proper planning prevents piss poor performance, or proper planning preparation prevents piss poor performance. Again, that's used heavily in what I do professionally. Planning is key to a lot of things. Preparation, it's all in the prep. That's kind of my mantra. And because of the oversight of the people running it, certainly that was one of the leading factors. Assumption, oversight, and advice. Now, I've used assumption already in this. I hate the word assumption, to be honest. I never assume, never take for granted something that you're not 100% sure on. The two officers in question assumed things because they'd been there before. They attacked it from two different ends. They believed that they were in the best position to achieve their aim, which was to be the first people to achieve that route. Assumption is the mother of all. You get my point. Advice. Yes, sometimes when you're in charge, you get people who are junior or more junior and you come up with great ideas, and it's important to get rid of that ego and take on board what these people say, because they might have a good point. They might be more experienced than you. Put the ego aside, listen to rationale, and if it's valid, if it's a good thing to do, then yeah, take that advice on board. Previous people had warned them. The park kind of warden warned them. The previous explorer warned them. The subject matter expert, the Commando Corporal leading Mayfield, he warned them that actually maybe we should cancel what we're doing because we're not prepared for this. But there was that blindness, that which leads on to my next point, that obsession with achieving your end goal. I know what it's like myself. Sometimes you're so driven to do something that you're blinded with your focus and nothing else matters. You just need to achieve that aim. But sometimes that can be a detriment to others. And that's what, again, as a leader, you need to consider, is not being so obsessive. Yes, to a degree, but not when it comes to the detriment of other people's lives. You've got to consider the factors. Look at the factors, look at the facts, consider what your options are and what is the most sensible course of action to proceed forward. Because if you don't, then the consequence of that could be ultimately not achieving your aim, but more importantly, people dying, which this expedition, the 10 guys that got away with it, were very lucky. Breaking the number one rule of survival. As you read the story, you'll soon discover that the one group splits into two groups. You've got the kind of, as the officers put it, the oldies and the novices, and you had the young whippets. Okay, in the whippets group, you had commander and airborne trained soldiers, you had territorial soldiers, you had regular soldiers. It was a mixture of a mixed bag. In the other group, you had the Chinese novice or Chinese Hong Kong soldiers and the 2 officers who were of middle-aged, should I say. Now, from day one, the officer in charge said that they had to make it to the summit because they were going to basically, you can see the background there, they were going to abseil from the top of the mountain, the summit of the mountain, over an edge into the gully and descend down. Again, you can look it up yourself, read the book. Basically, he said that because of the different levels of fitness and everything else, just crack on, guys, make your own way up, but stay in your pairs. It wasn't effectively communicated or understood by the group, and it became a free-for-all. And on day one of the Chinese guys was found passed out for exhaustion and dehydration on the track. There you go. So, as the actual expedition proceeded, there was the kind of the slow group and the fast group, and it got to a point where the slow group was so slow, and the fast group was in a position where they got this point of no return, that they just had to crack on for their own well-being, right? Because if they didn't, they would be then in a position where they wouldn't survive either, which obviously caused a lot of kind of bitter feeling between the 2 groups, or certainly the officer group. They couldn't understand why it happened, but basically I think because of the stress and everything of the environment, illness, injury, like I said, the stress of the situation maybe clouded the judgment slightly. But yeah, breaking number 1 rule: don't split up. You've seen Ray Mears, you've seen all these kind of survival programs. They always say stick together, don't split up. And inevitably, you read these stories about people that do split up and they're found dead meters away from tracks and things like that throughout the world. So again, stronger together. Lack of leadership. Again, you know, there's different styles of leadership, different people, different horses for courses, but you know, certainly they're all military people. There's such a hierarchy in the military, command and control. When you're on an expedition like that, yes, you know, rank, formalities, everything else, it's good to have. It's important to have, you know, a hierarchy, but it's likewise it's important to listen to everyone in the team, because everyone's in the same boat, everyone's in the same predicament, and that's where it kind of went wrong. It was very much, it's my way or the highway. You just shut up and do as you're told. Whereas the guys that actually knew what they were doing, what they were talking about, were ignored. So, yeah, the lack of leadership, very, very blasé, no command or control. Links into another point: communication was poor, certainly between the groups. You know, why didn't they set up forms of communication? You know, from your own life, relationships, everything you do, communication is critical. If you don't have good communication, then things are misunderstood, not interpreted correctly, and mistakes are made. Contingency planning. Again, if I was going somewhere like that, I would want to make sure that, again, when you read the book, you understand there was opportunities missed through letting people know to fire the flare, to let people know if they weren't there by what time to, you know, call it in. Flares, beacons, all sorts of options they had that would increase their chances of being found were missed. Oversights, belief they couldn't do this, couldn't do that. So contingency, if it goes wrong, what is plan B? What's plan C? What's plan D? Certainly we're going into a place like that where it's got such a reputation for, you know, being a place of the dead. Kind of says it all, doesn't it? So even in your own kind of outdoor pursuits, what are your plan B's, C's, D's? Have you got options? What are your methods of being found? Just considerations to think about, you know. Again, I talk about communication being quite critical. Very important thing to consider, certainly, is understanding and knowing your own limitations. Know when to say, no, I'm at my point now where I'm out of my depth. It's out of my control. I've got to stop, handbrake neutral, think about what I'm doing, and consider my next step. Ego, pushing on, you know, losing pride, losing face, whatever. Who cares? yeah, there are situations where you have to push yourself and don't give up. Agreed. But in a situation where it's life or death, you need to know when actually you've gone to a certain point, you need to sack it now, get back to safety and reevaluate and reflect on what's happened, and then come back better prepared next time. Not just blindly carry on and crack on because you're obsessed by your end goal, which again could be a detriment to other people. So knowing your limitations is certainly something to consider. In the book as well, you'll read about the hardships, the exhaustion, the level of fatigue that the group faced. Certainly some individuals were at a point where they wanted to just leave me there, leave me to die. You know, I totally get that. I've been in situations where I've just laid there for, leave me there. I've had enough. I'm done. But they found that inner strength, that little bit of motivation, and that will to live. It's just it kind of overrides anything else, that will to live. And it just kicks in. Certainly when you've got someone else with you, egging you on, driving you on, then when that person's low and needs a kick up the arse, you're there then for them. That kind of buddy system, And it's a very good book. And that's kind of my key points. Again, the Gully itself, you had the hazard perception, the risk assessment. You've got sheer faces, you've got granite rock faces, you've got potential for flash flooding, you've got boulders the size of houses, you've got loose debris, jungle terrain that would just, as soon as you walk on it, would fall away. All these kind of considerations to think about. Time of year. Again, do your research. Anyway, this is one of a few books I'm going to be reading over the next few months. Descent into Chaos. Well worth a read. Again, I've made notes from this book because I believe I can learn from it and certainly adapt certain things into my own kind of mindset, my own planning considerations for future things that I want to do. Never assume. But well worth a read. Again, it might be hard pushed to find this book. I think you can download it. I'm not sure. But look it up. Look at the story. On YouTube there are videos, documentaries. Worth a watch. But yeah. Definitely one to think about. Anyway, I know I've rambled on for nearly 20 minutes. I hope you stuck with it. And I hope you've got something from this. And I wish you a very, very happy Christmas. Thanks for watching.